Hi guys, welcome back to DH Crouch Marine Limited. So I'm down at King's Cross today. It's a return visit for a BMC 1.5. I've been over before. There's an issue with overheating and circulation of cooling fluids. I carried out a CO2 test and it failed, only slightly, but the chemical solution I used changed from blue to a kind of slight yellow, so it's starting to be problematic. One thing that I noticed when I was looking around the cooling system was the hoses. When I squeezed them, there was a horrible crunching noise, so it suggests there's a massive build-up inside the cooling system. And more interestingly is that the way this has been routed, depending on how you pronunciation is, the direction of hose and how they work. There's a hose that comes straight from the heat exchanger down to the cold pump, or the circulation pump, and I crushed it like that, and you could hear a crunch inside, which is the build up of scale, and then a glug, so air bubble, so there was a blockage, so the cooling pump wasn't getting adequate cooling or water. So head gasket job now, basically, long story short. So I'm going to start stripping down the engine, but I thought I'd done a film for a while, so let's make a film and watch me do that. So what happens now is I take the engine head off, all the auxiliaries and all the extra bits and bobs. I take the head back to my little workbench, clean it all up, strip out the valves, assess that part of it. I haven't got the equipment to skim the head and pressure test it, so I take that into a machine shop. I'll film that as well. And you can watch a head gasket on a BMC 1.5. Hope you enjoy. Right, enough waffling from me, let's do some work. I'll put a mask on here actually. It's a strange world, but we have to work with it now. So. Now then. if you've just got them on tick over all the time, then they just don't run properly. And what happens is eventually you start to get bypass. You get exhaust gases going down into the main galley, and you get engine oil coming up and being burnt. But for all intents and purposes, it doesn't look too bad, the machining on this. It looks like, as I say, it's been rebuilt fairly recently. So I'm going to come over to number 4 now, and you should better make out just the condition of the amount of carbon build-up on here. There's a fair amount on it. Right, that would do for waffling here. I'm going to get tidied up and take it back to my workbench and clean it all up, and we'll do a proper assessment there. So I'll bring you back. So I finally got the head onto the workbench. I've given it a quick degrease and a degreaser, and I'm just having another look. I've taken all the injectors out and everything else, but just looking at the valves before I take them out. So looking at this is number 1 at the front end of the engine where the thermostat housing is, and it does it 2, 3, 4 back that way. So there's a lot of carbon build up on this face, so it looks like it's been burning oil, which is what I reckon it's been doing. And when I looked down into the cylinders, the bores looked quite glazed, which is from running on tick over all the time to charge your batteries. So you do need to run your diesel hard every so often to try and help alleviate those problems, but you know, no one lives in a perfect world. Anyway, the best solution to that really is get solar panels. Solar panels are of an age now where they really can deliver the power that you will need in your daily lives. So I'm just scraping off the carbon before I move the valves. Just interesting stuff. So, by doing this, you can reveal all sorts of hidden gems and things you don't really want to see, but still need to be seen. So I'm going to get this clean, because tomorrow morning, which is a Saturday, I can drop this off at the machinist, because as much as I'd like a machine shop, I'm not there yet. I don't have the means to skim this face and pressure test. Well, I could do a pressure test on it, that's not a problem, but I can't skim the face. So I'll take it into the machinists and they can do that for me. And they're a good company, and they've been in business a very long time, and they know what they do. And I've used them a lot, so yeah, so anyway, getting all this carbon off. So this is obviously cast iron. I wouldn't do this with an aluminium head. I'd be a heck of a lot more considerate and cautious. There aren't a huge amount of aluminium heads on boats that I've dealt with. I've certainly got experience in dealing with them, but more commonly they're cast iron. Even some of the more modern Japanese lumps I'm dealing with. I believe some of the newer Kubotas, which are in a lot of the beta marines, I believe some of those have got aluminium heads, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to double check. I may just be making that up right now. But Lombardini is an engine that's aluminium head, and it's just like dealing with a piece of cake. Just no weight to it, and it's anyway. There we go. Right. Let's take out the valve. So in order to take valves out of the head, if you're not familiar, you'll need a spring decompressing tool, and it's a clever little cantilever type thing where you just use that and it will crush down on the spring. And let me flip the head over and show you. So typically with a 4-cylinder engine, you've got valves, yeah, and the way the valve stays closed is a spring detent, so the spring's lifting the valve permanently. And when an engineer refers to rockers, you've got these little arms that come over and they tap on here, which I'll show you when it's all clean. Let's just get the valves up. But in order to remove the spring, you decompress the spring with the tool. That holds the valve stem in the correct position, and that will pull down on the collet. Now collets are little things that lock in, and they get that, and there's a little cutout on the valve stem, and that stops the spring from disappearing. So I'll show you that in a minute anyway. Just to try and get myself set up here in a position where I can show you everything and it not all fall down and cause a cascading effect of destruction and doom. Right. It's quite late on a Friday evening at the moment, and I'm just trying to get this process underway, because yeah, I just want this job underway, because the lady is waiting patiently for me, and I don't like keeping people waiting any longer than I have to. Fortunately, life life gets in the way of itself. Let me just, I might just quickly nip those studs out actually, just to make my life a bit easier. And I've got a place to. No, I should remember this. I've done enough BMCs in my life. Right, where did I put my scraper? Right, so this is now the other way up. So technically it's upside down to you guys. The light isn't great, I'm afraid. Let me move that around so maybe the light can be better. I hope that's better. So I'm just going to now remove the exhaust manifold gasket and the air intake manifold gasket. Does two jobs, this one. And this is a composite. So the reason I've had this head off is obviously there's a gasket issue, cooling issue. The cooling system is full of rusty lumps of crud. The heat exchanger is full of crud. Well, it's not a heat exchanger because it's not raw water cooled, but the exhaust manifold. So that's composite, that's going in the bin. Let's had it. Right, so I'm going to grab my head torch and I'm going to take you for a little tour of the exhaust and inlet ports. So, not sure if you can see in there, that light's just too darn bright. Let me turn the light down a bit, see if that helps. Maybe that setting's better. So, you may or may not be able to make out there that that's full of carbon, yeah? I've seen worse. There's a lot of carbon. I'll have to go mining and clean that all out once I get around to it. That one's not so bad. Come to this one. It's drier. It's clearer. Not so bad. And drier and clearer again. Now, the reason some are looking wet and some aren't is because some of those are intake ports, which is cool air, and the other ones will be exhaust gases, which is hot. But let's get stripping this down and have a look at these valves. I have to lay the valves out so I don't forget which order they go in. Which way around we got it. So this is the front. So right hand side is the front, which is number one, and we'll lay them down on the table. I can address those properly later. Right. Use this tool in a while, so sometimes you have to give these a little tap to get them to release the so it's gonna work.
I've been searching.
You're on camera. Right, so where was I? I think that might be a little bit too far out. Let's come back out a bit. There we go. So this tool, because of the mechanism and the levering action, now rests and allows me to access these little gems, which are called collets, and the little cutouts on the stem of the valve, and these little bad boys clamp round two halves, and then inside the cup on top here, on top of the springs, or the spring retentioner, basically has a little conical cutout. So these are chamfered, or as you can see, and they go in like a wedge. They keep the valves from bouncing out and shooting off. So, so interestingly, on these engines, some of them have a twin coil setup, and the idea is to try and create a much smoother spring action, because you have one, it can kind of fire back like a bit of a missile, so this kind of smooths the action out. So there's one oily, disgusting valve, and it's got loads and loads of carbon build up on it. Let me just get my torch. I've got a big strip light in here, but it's not always the best light, I must admit. So, don't know if that helps. Maybe it's flickering on camera. Anyway, so there'll be loads of carbon build up. So I think that the stem seals are probably leaking on this, or worse, maybe the guides are, the valve guides are worn out. If the valve guides are worn out, then they need to be pressed out of the head. New guides, new valves, and that sort of stuff. But I haven't got that far yet. Let's have a little feel. There's a fair amount of movement on there. Well, I've seen worse. Okay. So let's bring you around this side. So now you should be able. Let me get my torch again. This is what happens when you do something on a Friday evening. So I don't know if you can make out there and clearly. It says loads and loads and loads of. Sorry for tipping you there. Let me just do that. Loads of carbon in there. So basically, because that's an exhaust port, that's going to be roasting hot. Yeah. Even though the engine's cooled, the combustion process in a piston chamber at the point of combustion, the top of the pistons will exceed 1,000 degrees, and obviously then the valve stem is going to absorb some of that heat and it's going to come up to the top. So the way the engine head has been designed and the way the manufacturers design things is to try and alleviate that heat, to absorb it and take it away, to manage it. And there's a number of ways they do that. Part of the cooling inside the head will have certain parts which will force water onto it. So obviously there's water jackets inside the head. That's the primary cooling system. The diesel is also responsible for taking heat away from the injection nozzles as well, which will you have a return. So there's a number of factors here to protect your equipment. So if you've got a smoky engine, or if your cooling system isn't adequate, if you think you're burning a lot of oil, which is blue smoke normally, thick black smoke more commonly will be overloading the engine, so something's binding or something's wrong. That's not a strict rule, mind you, so don't quote me on that per se. Right. So working back from the end, so we're actually working on cylinder number 4 at the moment. So we've done exhaust, this will be an intake valve and springs. Oh crikey. I have to check the book on this actually to see how much wear is allowed on these, but these have got a lot of movement on them. There's a little trick I'll do in a minute to show you how much. So in comparison, so this is an intake valve, much wider. The idea of that is so the diameter on the intake, which is on this side here, is bigger, and the exhaust is smaller. And the reason that is hot gases are under compression, and they're going to expand as they come out. And the bigger the hole to let more air in, the more power you'll get into the engine. Hence is why we now use turbos and stuff. So. Another way for cooling the head as well is to use air as well. So the air coming in will take some of the heat away from the hot side of the engine. So let me bring you around again. So we're working on cylinder number 4. Let me get my spotlight that blinds the bejeebus out of me. Right, so you should now see inside there. I'll try and wiggle it around a bit more for you. So the little tiny hole at the bottom is part of the guide. It's a long tube basically which guides the shaft of the valve up and down. That keeps it true with the seat. And the seat is I don't know if you can make it out there because my fingers can't do more than it's holding. There's a ring around there which is kind of clean, and that's the seat. So the valve seat has to sit on the seat. If it doesn't sit properly, you lose compression. If you lose compression, the engine doesn't run or doesn't run properly. Just grab my hammer. Do 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 do. I think that's a bit better. Hopefully you don't mind that. Right. Oh, that doesn't feel good. Oh man, I think that valve is bent slightly. It can't be. It's running too bad. It won't spin in the hole, which is interesting. So I'm wiggling that. There's not a lot of play on this one. I think these two have worn out. Oh dear, something went right with that. What is going on there? Ooh, I don't know there. Okay. Right, this is the rocker shaft and the rockers, so in case you're wondering what that means. So this is at the top of the head, and the camshaft is situated on a BMC 1.5 down the side. If you're looking at it from the bird's eye point of view, it would be down on the port side, down below, and you've got rods that come up, and they push on these little balls, sort of ball and socket type scenario. And then at the correct point of rotation for the engine and the process of the valves, intake or exhaust, that pushes up and then pushes down on the valve. So it pushes on the top here and allows the valve to open and close to allow air in or gases out, depending on what process is happening. Soft, very absorbent. Yeah. Looking at these, if the camera's going to, if the camera focuses or not. But to my eyes, they're in good nick, good condition. Let me just right, just clean that up a sec. So, oh, whoosh, that's got some aggression there, crikey. I think that's where the bracket holds the shaft, so that's not a running surface, so that's not a problem. And you can see the burnishing marks where the bushes run. So these bushes don't, rotate 365. They sort of come back and forward, if you like, reciprocate of a one. That's not the right word, is it? Rock, I suppose. Rockers rock. There we go. Keep it simple, Darren. Keep it simple. Now I don't want to pull this this rocker back past this rusty spot here, so I'm going to take some of this stuff, which is 3M abrasive pad. I'm just going to try to exercise these demons, as they say. Just take the rust off. But making sure I get my thumb right into the corner here and get all that rubbish off. Oh. Just enough to get it off, because I want to take the shaft off and give it a proper polish up. There you go, look, that just slides off now. And I'm just stacking them in order of removal, so I don't forget where they come off. Let's see, now we've got to give that a clean up there as well, look. Supposed to be reaming out the valve guide today, but I can't find my reamers. I've ordered a new one. It arrived this morning, but it was broken. So I've got onto my supplier and they're sending me another one out, but it's just annoying because I really need to get that done as well. I don't like keeping people waiting any longer than I have to. But as I say, Rome wasn't built in a day. So I'm just an example. So just wiggling these, getting a feel for it. And they feel good, you know. No, I haven't measured them yet, but I'm just sort of getting a feel for. So I felt worse in my life. I felt better, but they're certainly serviceable. Good, clean, and I don't think there's going to be a great deal of work done to this. So now that's some aggressive spots there. It's almost like rust, basically, where the brackets have been holding the shaft on. It suggests that water's been getting into the engine where it shouldn't be. Probably the gasket. But boat engines can be quite damp. It's important to keep your engine bay dry. Marine engine bays are probably the most aggressive environment in terms of industrial applications. They've got every possible thing you can think of in there. Chemicals, you know, electrical energy, heat, cold, moisture, all sorts of things. And every different material is vying for dominance, and you know, something's going to have to become noble and give itself up to electrolysis. And so you've got to really think about the relationship of all materials in an engine bay, especially with an engine. Let's have a look here. Well, I don't know if you can make out on camera there, but to my eye it's all very surface. I mean, there is some, oh actually no, there is some scoring here. What's going on here then? That's interesting. I mean, the bearing surfaces where the rockers rock aren't too bad actually, but there's some interesting damage where the brackets fit, so it's curious. It's just curious. Someone's I don't know, it's like it's scored. It's weird. I don't know how that's happened. Well, to my fingers, even though I've got gloves on, I'm pretty good. Good. Just slide it on. I use this one as a guide reference. There's one at the end here. You can make out that noise. There isn't any really. In there. So everywhere there's a hole, there's a bearing. So that oil comes through, yeah? That's the point I'm testing on. Probably can't make out on camera that, but you can see the greater diameter. You're looking just in here at where the shaft comes up and meets the bush, looking at the any gap in there, and they feel very good by hand. I could put the dial gauge on them and start seeing what they measure up, but to be honest with you, I don't see any benefit in going to that effort. They're in good nick. As I say, the shaft has had a bit of life and a little bit of abuse on it, but for all intents and purposes, it's serviceable. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Tiny amount of I mean, there is some wear on that shaft. I had one a while ago where the lubrication was failing to get to the rockers for a number of reasons, and it was just absolutely chewed to death. I mean, you could see like a step into the shaft. I'll just give these little faces a polish just ever so slightly, just so that when they so the old valves, curiously, I don't know if you can see a good one. Let me just get you a good one. Hang on. Ever won the lottery? No. Oh, okay. We haven't won the lottery, so I have to keep making YouTube videos. Oh, right, okay. So I don't know if you can make out the light on this camera, but see the top of this valve stem? This is an old valve, yeah? It's got this really aggressive wear on top of it. It's like the edges have kind of rolled up, and because these tap, there's no cap on these. They just tap. So they've been rocking back and forth, and there's these faces aren't as polished as they could be. So I'll give these a little. All of these rockers give them polish, but the new stems are like nice and polished and fine. So I don't want to allow that to work nicely. Got to check the books. There may be a slight 1 degree angle on those, just to allow the valves to spin as they come in and out. The spinning action on the valve just helps break any carbon build up and helps it seat properly, but I'm not sure that's what they do on these BMCs. I have to check. Anyway, must speak to the wife now. Bye. Cheers. Right, so where did I get to? Talking about houses and moving. Anyway, so I've just started to give that a little polish. Just taking off the high spots and just, I don't want to go too mad with it because I'm only doing it with my thumb. It feels better already. For the fucking Pedersen's sake. Hang on. Might have to refill my brake cleaner. It's a bit empty. Oh god, this one's really bad. Jeez. Look at that one. My god. That's crikey. So that one has been actually catching. So it can't just glide past the top of the valve. It's probably been, so one of these guides and valves has had burr in it, and it was literally stopping it from going up and down. So what's probably happening with this is it's catching and pulling the valve stem into the guide. Gosh, that's really bad. Blimey. I mean, we might just be cooled over. I have to give that a polish, and that's that one. So in comparison, so you can see that this one just has a little bit of rub mark, which is nothing to deal with. That one's quite bad actually. I'll give that a polish and see how we get on with it. At the back of these you've got these adjusters, so it's not like it's the end of the world. There's another one, look. Gosh, these valves have been really aggressive action on them. And that one as well. My god, there's a bit of work to do here. That one again isn't too bad. Smooth. Another one that's getting a bit battered in. And that one as well. So there's a fair bit of work to do here. So I would suggest that the engine was rebuilt not massively long ago. I don't think. I get the impression it's not too old a build. I might be wrong, but I almost guarantee nobody bothered to polish these in the past. These are probably really old castings, and they've served a number of different builds and engines. Oh, the phone is ringing. Bring it back.